They say loyalty is everything in the Mafia. But in truth, it's also the weapon that kills you first. Because inside Cosa Nostra, loyalty isn't proven by words or friendship. It's proven by blood, silence, and what you're willing to sacrifice when no one's watching. Welcome back to the channel. If you want to understand how the Mafia really tests its people, how they know who'll stay loyal when the world burns, hit subscribe. Because today, we're peeling back one of the darkest layers of organized crime, how the Mafia tests loyalty. Let's start with a rule that's older than the Mafia itself. Trust no one until they've been tested. When you first step into their world, whether as a driver, an enforcer, or a so-called friend of the family, you'll be watched closely. Every word, every reaction, every decision you make becomes data. The Mafia studies people the way scientists study chemicals, carefully, waiting to see what happens under pressure. The first test is obedience. It's never dramatic, it's small, a simple errand, a task that feels innocent. Maybe you're asked to deliver an envelope or move a car. But what they're watching for is hesitation. Do you ask questions? Do you look nervous? Because in their eyes, hesitation equals weakness. If you complete the task without flinching, you pass the first gate. But then comes the second test, loyalty against conscience. They'll ask you to do something that crosses your personal line. Maybe collect money from someone you know can't pay. Maybe rough up a friend who owes a favor. Maybe lie to someone who trusts you. You'll tell yourself it's just business, but they're watching to see how far you'll go before guilt stops you. The less guilt you show, the more they trust you, and the deeper they'll pull you in. Back in the 1980s Sicily, bosses like Toto Riina used this method with terrifying precision. He'd order young recruits to participate in beatings, sometimes even killings, not because it was necessary, but because it tied them forever to the family. Once you've shed blood with them, you can never turn back. You've proven loyalty by destroying your freedom. But loyalty isn't just about violence. In the modern Mafia, it's about silence. The ultimate test is how much pressure you can take before you break. That's why every phone call is monitored, every move observed. They'll spread rumors about you, feed you fake information, even leak secrets just to see if you repeat them. If that information circles back, they'll know you talked, and you're done. There's an old saying in Cosa Nostra: the tongue kills more men than the gun. Every organization, no matter how large or small, has an invisible circle, those who've been tested and those who haven't. The untested are tools. The tested are family. One of the most brutal tests ever recorded happened in Palermo in the late 1970s. A young soldier was accused of talking to the police. He swore his innocence. To prove his loyalty, his boss handed him a gun and told him to execute his own cousin, the man they claimed had betrayed the family. The recruit did it without hesitation. The next day, he was made a full member. But years later, when he discovered it had all been a lie, that the cousin had been loyal all along, he disappeared. Rumor says he took his own life. That's what loyalty looks like in the Mafia. It's not devotion, it's control. In today's world, the tests have evolved. They don't always ask you to pull a trigger. Instead, they'll see how much you'll risk for them. Maybe they ask you to hide money offshore. Maybe they involve you in a deal that could ruin your career if exposed. Once you take that step, you're trapped. Because they have something on you. A weakness.
a secret, a chain. That's how modern bosses operate. Loyalty isn't earned by courage. It's engineered through fear. But there's also another layer, emotional loyalty. The mafia builds a false sense of brotherhood. They attend your child's baptism, your mother's funeral, your wedding. They call you family, and they mean it, until you cross them. Then that same family becomes your executioner. To keep you loyal, they make you feel indebted. Every favor, every meal, every handshake is a debt you're expected to repay 100 times over. And in the mafia, a debt is never really paid. Even informants, pentiti, as they're called in Italy, describe how impossible it was to leave. They weren't just scared of dying, they were scared of betraying the only world they'd ever belonged to. The people who raised them, fed them, protected them. That's the psychological cage the mafia builds, one that locks you inside long before you realize it. In the 1990s, after the murders of anti-mafia judges Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino, hundreds of members turned state witness. Many explained how loyalty was tested like a religion. They were trained to believe the mafia came before God, before blood, before self. And when that belief cracked, the whole system began to crumble. Still, even today, new generations of recruits are tested in the same way. Maybe not with blood, but with secrets, with crimes, with invisible strings of debt and obedience. They call it honor, but it's really a prison built on fear. If you think you could pass those tests, ask yourself this: could you hurt someone you love just to prove loyalty? Could you carry a secret that might destroy you and still stay silent? Could you look into the eyes of a friend and lie because your boss told you to? That's the real exam inside Cosa Nostra, and most who pass it never walk free again. Because the final test of loyalty isn't one you take. It's the one they take on you when you're gone. If you disappear quietly, if you're remembered with respect, if your family is cared for, that's when they decide if you were truly loyal. And that's the cruel irony. In the mafia, loyalty is sacred, but it's never rewarded. It's just another tool of survival. So if you ever find yourself drawn to that world, remember this: they won't test your strength, your courage, or your ambition. They'll test your soul. And once you fail that test, you won't get a second chance. If you found this story eye-opening, hit subscribe, because next time we're diving into how the mafia punishes betrayal, the chilling truth about what happens when loyalty finally breaks.